everyone, welcome back to the channel. I decided to do just a super casual sit down chat today to talk about some of the questions that I have gotten since the New York video. So if the New York video is how you found me, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And it prompted a bunch of discussion in the comments. So I thought now was a really fun and opportune time to do like a 2-year post New York video. What has life been like for the last 2 years since I left? Because I don't know how clearly I told the story in the video. To be clear, I edited that video months ago now, and I don't really remember how good I was on the timekeeping. Everything was chronologically right, but I just don't know if I was mentioning like dates and years. So for clarity, I left New York about exactly 2 years ago. I did my final trip to New York in September of 2022. I drove down in my mom's SUV, I think, and emptied out the last of the things in my storage unit in Yonkers and then drove them back up across the border. And that was really me like officially moving out and leaving New York. So since that was exactly 2 years ago, and since I just released the New York video, I thought now was a really good time to talk about how life has been for the last 2 years, how it's been being back home in my hometown, how life in Toronto has been treating me, and really just talk through a whole bunch of different facets in my life. So I even have a little sticky note to make sure I touch on everything. So I'm going to briefly touch on updates about my health, talk really quickly about like family, friends, pets. I got a bunch of questions about the pet situation in the video. I am going to talk about dating and relationships really quickly and my relationship status. I also want to talk about like money and work because I also have gone through a career change in the last couple years. And I will also finally, last but not least, touch on just overall quality of life. Like, do I miss New York? Do I prefer living in Toronto? So that is what we are going to dive into today. If this is the first time you're finding me, my name is Kate. I talk about all kinds of things around here, life, relationships, money, career. So if that sounds good, subscribe, like, stick around if you want. But yeah, this is what we are going to talk about today. And if you don't know what video I'm talking about, I will link it above the New York video just so that you have context if you want to go back and watch it and be like, what is this lady talking about? That's what I'm talking about. Let's start really quickly with health and just get that out of the way. I didn't go into a ton of details in the New York video. I won't go into a ton of details now, but suffice it to say that I have a number of chronic health issues. And so the TLDR is that my health has improved a lot since my time in New York. I have continued to have new health challenges. Other things have come up. Actually, it was interesting when I first moved back to Toronto, I ended up in the ER, I want to say 3 times in like 2 months, which is not ideal. That's not what you want. And it was weird because I don't think I'd actually been inside an ER for like over a decade. So it was just sort of out of the blue. It was like as soon as I had moved home in late 2022. And in moments like that, you're just really grateful to be home. Like you're grateful to have your family members around you and to also have universal healthcare. As much as we have issues in Canada, I think I was always like terrified of getting healthcare in the US. And since then, things have been, on an upward trajectory. I've still had to get some medical procedures done here and there. For instance, I had to have a scope done last year, have some biopsying done. But even that, the results came back with a diagnosis. So if you struggle with chronic health, you know that sometimes you just want an answer. So even getting a diagnosis is really heartening. Like it's encouraging just to know what it is that you're dealing with. So yeah, generally things have been on an upward trajectory. My health has been, kind of steadily improving. And I'm feeling great. And I have a lot more mobility than I did when I was living in New York, which I'm super grateful for and is super, super appreciated. Okay, let's talk really quickly about just like family, friends, pets. I got so many questions on the video itself about the animals, which I was surprised by, because obviously when you're telling a story and you're like narrating a story, you don't want to include every like mundane detail. Again, I haven't watched the video in a few months, so maybe this was my bad. Like maybe I really did narrate it incorrectly, but a lot of people seem to get it. I don't know. No, I didn't abandon the cats. They went with the other human that they lived with. My ex brought those cats into the relationship. I did consider them mine because I lived with them and cared for them and took them to the vet, and my dog grew up with them. You know, like she was used to having them around every day. They did belong to my ex. He was the one who brought them into the relationship, and it was reasonable for them to go with him when we split up. And I took our dog that we shared. So like, I don't know why this is confusing to people. People break up all the time and have to split up pets. So I thought that was just kind of like clear, and then it sort of went without saying, but apparently not. Anyway, yes, I still have my dog. She is here. She's in great hands. The cats are in excellent hands. I'm sure living their best life in New York. No animals were harmed in the making of that video. Family, everyone is doing better these days, so that's great. Friends, it's honestly been a little bittersweet being back in Toronto. I miss people that I left behind in New York, but it's also given me an amazing opportunity to like reconnect with my lifelong friends, you know, people I've known since elementary school, high school, and even just my college friends at this point are people I've known for, you know, 20 years. And so being back home has been like, it's just been so nice to be able to see my family and loved ones like so much more. And that obviously was like part of the impetus of leaving New York. Okay, what did we have next? Let's get dating and relationships out of the way. I am very happily single. I have essentially been single for the last a while, year and a half, longer. I don't know. It's been a minute. And I did date briefly when I was back in Toronto. Primarily for a stint in 2023. I re-downloaded all of the dating apps. I was on Hinge, I was on Bumble, I was even on Tinder. That was one of my friends. She had met her boyfriend on Tinder recently at the time, and she was like, you never know. And I was like, okay. Went on a handful of dates and they were all fine, but I think as time was passing, I was just realizing that I was genuinely much happier being on my own. Like, this has been a season of my life where I'm just really having an opportunity to look inward, heal, recover, and take care of myself. And I just realized I just don't want to be with anybody else right now. Like I think it's hard because we all have such overwhelming like social pressure to couple up. Like, even if we're not consciously aware of it, like that is the messaging we're all getting all the time, like that you have to couple up. And only speaking for myself, I don't think I had ever stopped to really question that and ask myself, like, do you even want to be in a relationship? Like, do you even want to share your life with somebody right now? And I think I started asking myself that for the first time last year. And the answer was no. Like, I don't want to do that right now. So I've chosen not to. I deleted all of the dating apps about exactly a year ago, last November, I think it was. So actually, as I'm coming up to the 1 year of being off the apps, I'm going to make a video dedicated to what it's been like 1 year off the apps and not dating at all, and if I would ever go back to the apps. So subscribe if you want to stick around for that and you want more of a deep dive on the dating side of things. But yeah, in short, like, it's just not something I'm interested in doing right now. I deleted the apps last year and I've like never been happier. Honestly, I never think about re-downloading them. In the last year, I haven't thought about them like at all in a positive or appealing light. And yeah, and I just genuinely haven't ever had the impulse to re-download them. That's kind of where we're at with dating. I mean, I suppose I could meet people in real life, but at the end of the day, my objective is not to get into a relationship. Like, it's not just about the dating apps. It's just, I don't want to be in a romantic relationship right now. So, yeah, I mean, I've met people like more organically too. And it's just not something I'm super interested in. This has been one of the happier times in my life, just being by myself. So I'm gonna keep that going because life has been really, really good. Okay, number 4, I wanted to touch on like money and work and career and just like all of those kinds of things. Again, I didn't go into a ton of details in the New York video about my job and what I do for work. I did move to New York for work initially. I was there on an H-1B visa, and so I was sponsored to come to the US to fill like a very specific role in a think tank. I was a researcher at the time, and I worked in an area that requires a lot of research and advocacy in the US. So that is what brought me to America originally. As I kind of alluded to in the video, my career was quite unstable, in large part just due to my immigration status in the US. Again, I was on an H-1B and then I got a new H-1B, but being in the US on a work visa is really difficult. Like, if you've never experienced it, it's hard to explain just how much instability and uncertainty it brings to your life. And even just the fact of like, if you hate your job, you can't quit it. Like you are stuck, you are trapped. Like, you cannot grow your career in the way you want to. You do not have the freedom and flexibility to change your job, to change your career in the ways that you want to. So it's just like very limiting. And honestly, that was probably the single biggest factor in what really deteriorated my relationship with living in the US. Because, you know, like, it did end up being, I think, death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, if it had been any of those one things on their own, like the pandemic, but I had American citizenship, or if it had been, you know, just a breakup, but like everything else was great. You know what I mean? Like, if it had been any one of those things, then it would have been fine. I think it was just, you know, when it rains, it pours. Life has a way of kind of making everything fall apart at once sometimes. And yeah, and so my immigration status was just something that brought me an incredible amount of anxiety, and rightfully so. I mean, I had to do a really mad scramble like in 2021 where I had to do a visa run, like book a plane ticket to Canada and get out of America like on super short notice. Again, this is still at the height of the pandemic. They still are requiring testing. I had to do a hotel quarantine when I got back to Canada. Like, it was a nightmare. A lot of boring details, so I don't want to keep going on and on about this, but that was probably the single biggest factor that really impacted my time there. And at the end of the day, you know, it is a huge part of why I had to leave. Like, even if I had wanted to stay, like, the US does not allow people to self-petition for their own residency like other countries like Canada and Australia, where if you've been living in those countries for a certain period of time, you can apply for PR, you can apply for permanent residency, and very few employers will sponsor for green cards. It's really difficult to access that pathway through work. Anyway, so also, yes, in the last couple of years, I've gone through a total career change from what I was doing in New York. I am still a researcher now, but I work in tech. That's the gist of it. I have changed to working for a tech company, so I still work as a researcher, just now I research how people use apps. I've really loved my career change. I've actually done videos about the career change as well too, so if you want to go back and watch those, like, I'll link them. And it really outlines like how I went through the whole process of changing career, because that was underway when I was still in New York. I was actually doing a tech boot camp for the last 8 months that I was living in New York City. Basically meant that as soon as I moved back to Toronto, I was able to start my new career. I did get a job in tech basically as soon as I got back to Canada, which was amazing. And since then, that's what I've been doing, and I have really enjoyed the last 2 years. In terms of like money, cost of living, honestly. I kind of want to do a deep dive video of like, is New York or Toronto more expensive, and like break it down on all these different categories, like just taxes, transportation, housing, all of that. But I think honestly, they're pretty comparable. Like New York might be a little bit more expensive, but it's close. Like it's close. Toronto's housing is really, really atrocious as well. Yeah, just everything, you know, like going out to eat, getting a drink at a bar, like just everything comes at a premium. So it is a lot like New York in that way. Like it's like you go out and it's, you know, $18-20 cocktails. That's pretty normal. They don't feel like dramatically different. So it's not like I've been able to like save way more money in Toronto or anything like that. Like, no, not at all. Okay, and then finally, quality of life and just my actual feelings about Toronto, New York, which is better, which one I enjoy more. So it's interesting because like there's nuance in this, and that was what I found so funny about like hundreds of the comments on the New York video, people just being like, this place is over and it's ruined. If you can't have fun in New York, like I don't even know what to tell you. That is a you problem. Like it's okay to comment on the city like changing or there being like a different vibe, but like cities change. So all of those comments I just like completely disregarded, or was like, okay, you're not gonna find your audience with me. Like I'm not even gonna entertain what you're saying. Like of course there are things I didn't like about New York, of course there are things I don't like about Toronto, but like everywhere I live I'm like there's a lot to love as well. And it just seems like life is a lot better when you can just appreciate a city for what it is and for the things that it does offer, rather than just focusing on what it is not. And so there are lots of things I do miss about New York. Some of it is just like my own little like food things. Like I miss my chicken and rice guy, you know? But like it's not a big thing. It's just like we get into our habits, we get into our routines. I miss this like particular pizza place. But at the end of the day, like Toronto has an amazing food scene. It's incredible. So again, it's like there's specific spots in New York I miss, but in terms of like actual quality and selection and choices, the food scene in Toronto is fantastic. So I don't really feel like it's been a huge like void or anything, or like that there's even that much of a difference. It's just that I miss some of my New York spots. Where I really do feel a huge difference is entertainment, specifically thinking about like Broadway, stand-up comedy, and even things like being able to go to like a jazz club. New York wins, and Toronto has, again, a lot of great entertainment. It doesn't matter. It's so far from even being comparable. Like I love stand-up, so I used to spend like a good amount of time just like going to the Cellar and things like that. So, yeah, and even like jazz, I'm not a huge jazz person, but like having that option to have like access to some of like the most famous jazz clubs ever is like pretty incredible. And then like Broadway, again, there's just no comparison to the quality on Broadway, to the selection of shows, to like it. Yeah, I hate to say it, but it's just it's something that is worth loving and appreciating about New York. So I think those are the main things. Okay, I'm trying to think. What else do I miss about it? Oh, I miss New York public transit. Again, people complain about it. Oh, it's so unsafe. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. It's just like, okay, whatever. I don't know. There's like more than 2 subway lines. So yeah, that's important to me. Having subways that actually go places. Yeah, Toronto is like not very functional when it comes to public transit. Yeah, you can take streetcars and buses, but it's terrible. Like it's not convenient. Yeah, I miss New York. I miss the MTA. I miss the MTA, and I also miss the connective, I miss Metro North. I miss NJ Transit. I miss Amtrak. Like the Northeast, I haven't lived anywhere else in America, but I've traveled extensively in the rest of America. I don't know. The Northeast seems to be the only place that is pretty dialed in for public transit. So like I miss all of that. I miss having access to that. Okay, so then what do I like about being in Toronto, and what do I prefer about being here versus New York City? The first things that immediately come to mind are just like the cleanliness of the city and access to green space. Toronto is way cleaner. And I actually don't even know how much I would care about that if I didn't have a dog, but I have to say, walking a dog in New York City every day is like going to war. And if you have a dog in New York, you know what I'm talking about. Every walk is like, there's broken glass everywhere. You're prying a chicken bone out of your dog's jaws. Like, it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. Like, unless you have a lot of money and unless you live in one of the parts of the city that is like very proximate to green space, it's not enjoyable. It's not enjoyable, like walking your dog through the streets of Brooklyn. So density is so much lower. Everything is so much cleaner. There's so much more space. There's so much more green space everywhere. Like, there's parks everywhere. There's hiking trails everywhere. There's beachfront all over the place. So in that way, Toronto, it's really nice to be back in a city where I feel like pretty immersed in green space still. And yeah, and like Toronto is just way quieter. I sleep better here. I feel safer here. That might just be like the Canadian thing where like, I don't know, we didn't even like lock our doors growing up. So maybe it's like a false sense of safety. I don't know what the stats are. Gun violence is like probably less of a thing here, but yeah, I just generally feel like more safe as well. Right or wrong, I don't know. That could be completely misguided, but that is just like how I feel. But yeah, honestly, I mean, there are things I love about both. And if immigration hadn't been such a huge issue, like, it's entirely possible that I would have stayed in New York. I still do miss it. I do still love it a lot. I have a lot of love for it. I think I always will. But Toronto has like a lot of perks too. And it is really nice in this season of life where I'm just kind of looking for like a little bit more chill. You know, it's like a little bit more of a restorative season in life. I'm wanting to spend more time outdoors. I'm wanting to spend more time, you know, just like reading, doing my hobbies, chill, and not like going out all the time. Toronto's like a good place while still having access to, you know, amenities and things to do. And, you know, like I still have everything I need on my doorstep and it's very walkable, and you still have all the perks of like a big city while still kind of feeling like it's just like quieter. And it's just an easier place to live, you know? If you've like ever spent any prolonged period of time in New York, like you know it's hard. Like it grates on you. Even if you love it, it can wear you down after a while. And I think Toronto does that too, but it feels like way less pronounced. So it feels more sustainable, and that's like super nice. And I'm really loving that. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really happy. The last couple years have been overall definitely still some ups and downs. It's not like life has been perfect since moving back here. There's still been a lot going on in, you know, my personal life and work transitions and life transitions and all kinds of other things. But I feel like I'm finally getting to a place where I feel settled after what was a really tumultuous few years. I think it's hard because I honestly, for the first time in the last few months, I've gotten to a place where I'm like, even just feel where things have felt calm enough where I'm like, I could even begin to think about being bored. And like, that is a luxury. Like, being bored is a luxury. Your life being stable enough where you're like, I could, like, I'm feeling itchy feet. Like, that is a privilege. If you feel that, like, you're so lucky. Because yeah, honestly, for the last 5 years, my life has been so chaotic that I'm like, finally just like, I'm so happy for every day to be the same. I'm so happy for things to just feel calm and predictable. Like, I'm good. I'm very much in a season of life where that is the goal. Yeah, life is good. I do just want to emphasize that, yeah, like, also in the video, obviously I'm talking about, you know, more of a transition time in my life and, you know, a particular relationship and breakup I went through. But I do just want to reiterate, like, again, these things happened some time ago now. I am healed, like I am good. That is how life goes. Life is a series of like starting over. Life is just a series of fresh starts. Life is just a series of thinking that you know what the is going on and then realizing, no, you don't. Like, what is the saying? You make plans and God laughs. Exactly. The universe does not care about your plans. That was a season of like, oh my God, please stop. And now a couple years have gone by and things are in a much better place and I'm good. But yeah, I hope I touched on everything. If I missed anything, feel free to drop comments below. Ask me any other questions. I can do follow-up videos. I can make videos about stuff that you guys are interested in hearing about. Let me know. But hopefully this covers most of the questions from the New York video and the aftermath. And thank you so much for joining today. And I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.